Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe, and see you next week.
How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spirit Talk. And I'm excited today because I finally get to have another one of my dream guests on the podcast, the legendary Erin Brockovich. And for those that aren't familiar with Erin's background, her career, American paralegal, consumer advocate, environmental activist, author. Superman's Now Coming, her latest book, came out a year or so ago. I actually have it. Great read. I highly recommend it. And so before I kind of jump into this, and maybe before you talk about your career and how you got started all this, I need to know, how do you stay so laser focused and determined and relentless in your pursuit of advocating the rights of people and all this? Like, it's just crazy how like watching you work and doing all these traveling around the world and like TED Talks and conferences and going to town halls. It's admirable that someone like you has sacrificed so much of your personal and family and all this to chase the stuff that other people are chasing for the rights of humans. It's just mesmerizing.
Oh, well, hi, John. Thank you for such a great introduction. And it's good to be here and it's nice to meet you. Well, that's a big question right out the gate. You know, I think people ask me that all the time, and I'm not always sure what it is. Sometimes it feels bigger than me. There's times where I can't help myself. It just feels like a calling. I'm very instinctual. I talk about instincts all the time. I'm very guttural. And when I get certain places, I just know. And there's almost this moment for me where it's like, oh, not again, a bit. I can't turn away from it. I was born and raised in Kansas. My dad's an engineer. He actually ran and built pipelines for Texaco. My mom is a journalist and a sociology major, and they had such a huge influence on me. And my dad was really the one that taught me about respect, honor, dignity, principles. So that might be the word that I'm looking for when I get to these locations and I can just see, I can feel the suppression, the lie. I can feel the environment dying. That hurts me. And I just get called into action. So sometimes it's not always a clear strategical move. It's just is, and I need to respond.
Does it ever get tiring though? Like, when can you ever just kind of like, okay, so the recent train derailments that have been happening and all the chemicals and stuff, I know you've been involved in some of that. When that stuff happens, do you kind of just sit back and go, I'm being called to this, I'm being drawn to this? Like, when you have a tired day or like you're mentally or physically just not feeling it, what drives you to go that next step? The stuff you just talked about, knowing who your dad was, and like get how he was relentless in his work ethic as well.
Again, you ask another really good question because I'm a little bit in a shift right now. So out on the train derailment, I watched what was going on for days, and I don't know that everybody was, but the media wasn't covering it. And I just kind of kept looking at it. Normally when there's something like that happening, my emails blow up because the community will start coming to me. But it was eerie in its silence. Like, it wasn't in the media. I'd have an email here or there, what should we do? And I was just looking at it going, honestly, I'm like, what the fuck? Why is nobody talking about this? So I did a tweet and I'm like, hello, is anybody paying attention to this? Because I mean, it looks like a bomb just went off in America and we're not discussing it. So that was my first involvement. When I went out there, I got, I have to practice daily. My frustration, my anger can overwhelm me. So I have to be very conscious in my thought and very protective of myself. because that anger just stresses me to the point where I might not function. And so I had that feeling when I went out there, and it was another lie. You could see it, you could feel it. It was going to be a cover up. That's exactly what it's turned into. Complete agency failures. It was everything that I talked about in my book, Superman's Not Coming. And I have to cathartic to myself and get through this. I cannot believe I've been doing this 30 years and freaking nothing has changed. People wonder why I cuss all the time. I mean, I get out in these places, I'm just like, what the fuck? Did you not fucking see that? Were you fucking listening? What the fuck? I mean, I just really have to go through that process. And that happened there. And I got exposed there. I've been exposed to other cases and, other chemicals and other cases. And that kind of started to knock me out, because once I get an exposure like that, and again, that's something that made me very, very mad. I was telling the media, don't stay close to here. You're going to get exposed. We were experiencing things. There was this push happening with the law as they were coming in with a lawsuit. And lawsuits cannot be the solution to this problem. Correct. This is way beyond that. And how are we going to fix it? How are we going to stop it? How are we going to change it? So when I got out there and got sick, I kind of needed to start to back out because I was going to go down. So I have a lot of exposures, and people don't understand these things. People will have different responses to different chemicals based on their age, based on their health, based on, underlying immune systems. And I've been exposed enough to chrome-6, to carbon disulfides, knocked myself out. What happens for me is it takes very little, like a dose response ratio, to set me off. And then, so I kind of started to pull out a little. And then I came back in for another meeting because I don't want to leave the people. I stand with them always.
Right.
They don't make this stuff up. And I think a lot of people think they do. Oh, it can't be that bad. It can't smell that bad. It's a gaslighting moment for these communities. And I'm gonna be honest with you, when that gaslight moment happens, that's when I'm like, oh, game over. I'm not doing this, because it's a real experience for them. And it's really happening. And frankly, it's happening to all of us. And it could be every single one of us. As I watch our environmental issues, our infrastructure failures, our agency failures, we're sitting ducks for some really big problems. But where I really kind of got irritated, and I don't talk a whole lot about it in the train derailment, which is something that's never happened before. But somebody turned me into the Homeland Security, and I'm now on the extremist watch list. And I'm like, what? Are we for real? Okay, so don't even get me started now. Because, oh, wow, because this is a part of the Patriot Act, which I know and understand, and things that we create for good reason oftentimes can get compromised. Right. And so now we have all these call centers. So anybody, if they want to shut you up, can turn you into it. I'm like, wow, what a way to silence people. What a way to step on my First Amendment rights. And that really frustrated me. And I'm like, okay, I'm stepping out of this for just a minute till I can kind of figure out how I can walk through this, because you don't want to be on a list like that. And, we have nuns on that list. We have Earth Justice attorneys on that list. Again, this is something we're not talking about. So right. Now I'm starting to put together how we're silencing these big environmental disasters. So I got pretty overwhelmed out the gate. And so I'm not out there as much. I'm in constant contact with these people. Sorry, that's one of the boys. Scooby. That's Scooby. I have to retreat and kind of re-strategize and work my way from there. So, the lawsuits are going on. It's taken these people a while to kind of understand themselves what's going on, where the lies are. So they'll feed me back information. And then keeping it alive in the news is important, because oftentimes these things aren't talked about. We think they just go away, and they don't.
And to your point, like it seemed like for the last year, or maybe 2 years, that there's either a trade derailment, there was a fertilizer plant that blew up, a farm that blew up, all these chemicals and stuff going out there, and the next week no one talks about it. It's like, where do these corporations draw the line with what we do, whether it's illegal or not legal, dumping, whatever, even if they're on the up and up? At the end of the day, at what point do these corporations realize that money should never outweigh the humanity, the people that this stuff could be affecting? It's like, it just seems so, why is this even a discussion? It's just so bizarre to me.
Well, I look at that a lot. I've had a unique experience on the ground for 30 years, and I can see both sides of something. I can see what they're doing. I can see where their mistakes are. Every single time, it's always about the bottom line is the money, their profits, answering to their shareholders. And I think this stems from an old business model, if you will, that started with the Ford Pinto theory.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people remember the Ford Pinto and the gas tank that was in the back. If you got rear-ended, the cars were blowing up. Well, they figured out, instead of fixing the problem, it would be more profitable to them to push that down the line and just deal with the litigations. So I think a corporate model took a hold back in then, and they've just gone with it ever since. That model is not going to work for them moving forward for a whole host of reasons. So their mindset is generally about profits, money, and they don't like to reinvest in themselves. They'll wait for federal agencies or state agencies to fund them when they have infrastructure issues. They won't do that for themselves. So with a bad corporate business model, if you ask me, and pushing that can down the line and ignoring the problems you have on the line and just waiting till you get caught and then paying out the litigation, just won't work anymore. Back in the day when we settled Hinkley, that was $333 million, the largest direct action settlement of its kind. Well, PG&E today, and I worked on the big fires in Paradise and Northern California, that settled with insurance subrogation and all the people's claims, property loss, lost life, etc., settled for about $34 billion. I work in the PFAS world, which is the forever chemical, which is the Teflon, the firefighting foam, the Scotchgard, all of that, which we could get into for days and talk about. Is contaminated not only the entire country, but the entire world. You're looking at settlements there that could hit $1 trillion. It's just not going to end. And I step back and I think, what? Why do we keep doing this? It makes zero sense. And so I think it's about shifting a mindset and shifting a business model to fixing your issue on the up front. Safety, structure up front, so you don't have the problems down the line. And we've kicked the can down the line so far. We're pretty backed up into some big trouble. And here we go. We wait again for this current administration to do a Build Back America Better plan, which I think we're not realistic about this. I talk about planning, implementation, realism, and being prepared, and we're clearly in that moment. You can roll out a plan, but if you're not transparent with the people, listen, we're not going to have lead-free water when we've got 18 million miles of lead pipe in this country freaking tomorrow. So what I don't get is why. Just say it. Just say it to the people. I have learned people in communities, they can handle the truth. What they don't handle is the lie. Yeah. And that's what gets company and our politicians in trouble all the time. This is a long game. This is a long fix. And I'm glad to see that maybe it's coming to light now. that this is what we need to do. But in the interim, y'all better start getting prepared for these disasters. What's your plan B when we know what's coming and we don't want to deal with it? So there's so many facets to the environmental issues. It's what I worry about is we as people have become disconnected from our environment. We think it's something separate. Nothing could be further from the truth. When you destroy the water, you destroy yourself. Why are we doing this?
Right.
We are water. And water fascinates me. You know, there's no two bodies of water anywhere the same on this planet. It has its like own individual fingerprint, kind of like we do.
You kind of hinted at it. I'm glad you did. The whole green energy, and like I try to find myself as I'm obviously I would hear myself a conservationist. I care about the environment. I care about I remember a couple of years ago, this old house I'm living in had lead paint on the thing, and I'm out there vacuuming the paint chips off the soil because I care about that stuff. And as dumb and trivial as that sounds, I get why I'm doing it. For generations to come, it's like I want to buy into the Green Deal just for the sheer fact that environment first. But then you look at how the last 2 years with the pandemic and people throwing their masks in the oceans and no one caring. And then you look at like what they want to do with like the electric cars, and like the batteries, radioactive decay doesn't destroy the soil. Or how do you get rid of the batteries? All these ideas that you talked about. But when enough people kind of go, hey, we're pro environment, but talk us through this because you're sending mixed signals. I don't think the environment should be political. Yet you have two sides of or whatever arguing over what's going on. It's just confusing.
On mixed signals. I'm sending mixed signals, or
No, anyone like
corporations?
corporations, politicians, all that.
So I'm a boots on the ground kind of girl.
Yeah.
I have to feel it. I have to see it. I have to sense it. And this will take us back to that disconnection from the environment. Or it'll take me to my Wizard of Oz theory, which we can talk about if you want later. We got comfortable. We got complacent. And I can say that because I did too. Maybe we bought an illusion. But maybe we got filled with a bunch of hot air and was looking to everybody else to fix this problem rather than look at ourselves.
Right.
And I think that if each one of us did that and found ourselves and our connection to the environment and stopped thinking, that's why I wrote Superman's not coming. No one. What's been missing and what I think we learned during COVID is us. And we, you know, I know we vote, we do all that, we think we're participating, but at some level, we just assume that we would never get into this environmental situation. We want to believe that. We need to believe that. And I think it's a pretty big shock for everything. And that's part of what's happening, in my opinion, right now. We're starting to realize what the fuck happened. What's going on? So there's this moment where I actually am more excited than I have been in 10 years because I think we are starting to question ourselves, look at ourselves. You know, I talk about one of my programs, RAM, which is realization, assessment, accountability, motivation, and self-renewal of oneself. We're always giving that to someone else or thinking someone else will give that to us when it is a process of true personal reflection and personal growth and realizing it is up to you. And if every one of us everywhere did that, we'd start chipping away at the issues that are going on in our own backyard. We would be maybe feel more accountable, more connected to them. I think a lot of things go on with people. You know, one of the first things, okay, so let me back up here. So I grew up with, I'm a dyslexic. And I learned early on in my life that because I was seen as different, I was treated differently. I was teased, I was judged, and I was put in a box. I'm like, oh no, I can tell you right now, I do not like to be in that position. But yet that is a process that can happen to any of us, if not all of us. So I learned really early on how to punch my way out of there. I had the help of my mom that taught me the power of stick-to-itiveness. I had a school teacher who was willing to give me my test orally. She knew I knew. She didn't question it. She didn't keep me in that box. All of these things kind of started. I find my way out. I found that sense of I got to stick with this. My father with the environment, all of those things were kind of preparing me for something that I didn't know what was yet to come. So I recognize in communities, I recognize in my life that stop. Somebody else puts that stop, and that's almost what will spring me into action. And when I began my work in Hinkley, I could see the water was green. The frogs had two heads, but yet everybody would tell me that's not real. I'm like, wait a minute. What do you mean that? I'm looking at it. Now you're trying to tell me what I see isn't real? That's again where I go nuts. The people, their stories were outlandish, and it made no sense to me that they were making it up. Yet they were afraid to talk. And I'm like, ooh, this is so eerie to everything growing up, everything that I learned. And I stood there when everybody told me, you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer,
Right.
You're not a scientist, you're not a politician. What is it you do? What is it you actually know that we should even listen to you? And I was gobsmacked. I'm like, wow. I didn't realize I had to be any of that to be a human.
Right.
And to tell you what I see is wrong, and I'm going to get involved. And that is those moments where I think for so many of us for so long, either bought a storyline or thought or the judgments or the labels or the idea of what any one of us is supposed to be based on whose rules. And so back to COVID, I think that was a moment where we got sat down, and a moment where we could self-renew, where we could look at ourselves or what was important to us or where have we been. And that's that accountable moment. I think this is moments where we don't, everybody wants to fit in, right?
Right.
And we get afraid or we feel vulnerable or somebody teases us or there's this idea of who we are, and then we retreat back into ourselves. And so I'm really in a moment in my life and in my keynotes or my teachings, what has been missing is us, is you, and understanding who we are and our connection to this planet. And I think if we can find our way back moving forward, we'll be able to find our way home. We'll be able to fix these issues. We'll be able to be realistic, and we'll be able to better look at the plans that we're implementing. And I'm hopeful that we're in that transition
Right.
on this planet right now. And I see it everywhere. And so again, I've had such a unique experience for 30 years. It'd be nothing I could explain, in an hour. It's a lifelong journey for every one of us, but how I can put the components together, and not only do the right thing that we need to do, but for the future, how we're going to plan this out. We cannot afford to continue to make the mistakes we've made.
Right.
And we're going to have to change old ideas or theories like the solution to pollution is dilution. Well, that didn't work out too well for you, did it? And we can sit here and argue all day long about everything, but it's the woulda, coulda, shoulda. Everything that we did to become the country, the people, the society that we are back then was all good and well intended. But over time, things changed, ideas changed, things got corrupt, things got suppressed. And this is that moment that we've gotten to where we've got to bust out of that, and we got to get busy changing things for a future that is one that includes the environment. And I know how people listen. I have my own questions on the new Green Deal. That's another conversation, because I'm like, again, we, in our quest to rush, we go back to old ways.
Yeah.
And even in the new Green Deal, okay, that sounds good, but are you talking about the fact that we're mining for cobalt in Missouri right now, and you've destroyed the aquifer and the farmland? That is not sustainable. Are we looking at an infrastructure that is not ready to make the switch into, if you don't have the infrastructure for it, you're down, you're done. I experienced that here in California maybe about a year ago this time. We get the Santa Ana winds. They're supposed to start today. It gets warm. Everybody is got the air conditioners cranking, where the grid is stressed. And you get a text, fire watch, Santa Ana winds, the grid is stressed, so you can't charge your car. And I'm like, what? So wait a fucking minute. I got a fire roaring up my ass, and I've got a grid failing, or you're going to shut my power down so I can't charge my car? I'm literally going to have to walk out of a raging fire. So I look at things, and this is where I don't want us to make the same mistakes again that we've done in the past. And we can't hang on to that. But you have a moment here where we can't afford to do the same thing. We have to really look at what the Green New Deal means. We have to really look at what's sustainable. We have to really look at how long are these goals? Are they realistic goals? What, we're all going to have EV vehicles by 2030? You're talking about a massive infrastructure system. It's going to take longer than that. And so that's what worries me. But I would like us to be focused on that. But what's your plan B? Because these natural disasters are going to happen. You can blame it on climate change or not. They are going to happen. And we do have climatic conditions that could be way nature is. It could be our quest, our pollution for, a better society and all the technology and everything that we all work and enjoy. And listen, I'm a part of that. I fly around. I want to drive my car. I love my lights, but in that quest, have we pushed too much where we could really fail? So all of these things, it's so interesting. I can never answer anybody's question just one way, because everything that we do is a multi-pronged approach. This all or nothing, my way, the highway, this is the right way, the wrong way, isn't working. We're going to have to be multi-pronged approach on our future, cleaner energy, ourselves. It's not one or the other. And that's where we get into trouble. And I'm hoping that these types of conversations, that as we look back now, where we can make that shift, not to make the same mistakes again. And part of that for me is about being very transparent about what's going on, even if we don't want to hear it. And I have learned that people will deal with that. What they won't deal with is going back to the same old thing. And I think that we have to look at ourselves and not get comfortable, not get complacent, not assume anything, but rather take that task on as us, as our individual self, and how we can take even one action in your own backyard. And if every one of us did collectively, help move us towards a better planet.
Does someone like Greta Thunberg help or hurt the cause for environmental conservation? Because for me, while I admire the outspoken and the talk in front of whoever and just go out and talk about it, I also see a lot of the hypocrisies as well. But I'm also like, why was she thrust in there as just a vessel for other talking heads? I'm trying to understand what the end goal of that was. Because it seemed like she was just being puppeteered around
Yeah.
It just seemed weird. I feel bad for her actually.
Yeah, I don't know her personally. I find her admirable, but
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying about feeling bad for her. She's a very young girl,
Yeah.
and she showed us as one. And see, she was in it for the long game. She didn't show up on, Fridays to sit there and not go to
Right.
school to send a message because she thought it would be something cool to do. She felt it. She meant it. It was a way for her to express something that she felt was really wrong. And she's a very young girl. And unfortunately, that happens for all of us. I was a real young girl when the film came out. I started my work at 31, so I'm now 63, a grandmother of 4. But when there's that moment, so she caught that moment. Others around her will come in
Right.
and want to direct her or manipulate her because, see, that makes them now important because she's involved. And I've watched her process with her. She seems angry now. There's other issues, and so I think she's in that person. She's trying to find out who she is.
Yeah.
She's going to stay true to her cause, but it's very difficult when everybody else around you is pushing and pulling you, and it's even that much more difficult for a young girl. I'm
Right.
63 and just starting to figure myself out, let alone being 17, 18, 19 in this worldwide moment getting thrust upon her. And so I just can't emphasize this enough. We've just got to stay true to ourselves. I remember right after the film came out, and you remember the hanging Chad moment in the
Oh yeah.
elections down in
Yeah.
Florida,
Yep.
and Al Gore reached out to me, and I had lunch with him, and you even see with somebody like that, we were having a conversation about a scientist, and he was eating his salad, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh my God," and salad flew out of his mouth, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there's the real person." That was passionate. That
Right.
frustrates me. And we when we become in the spotlight, sometimes even going to a wedding or being uncomfortable with ourselves, we put that shield up, and you start to move away from what that real essence of that person is. I think we've kind of seen that with Greta,
Yeah.
and because we don't know how to handle a situation because we're being pushed, pulled, and shoved. And I went through the same process. And you can get caught up in a lot of stuff. And this is, oh my gosh, to thy own self be true, right?
Yeah.
Is very true. And we lose it for a whole lot of reasons. And I think that there's big moments in our life where we come back to that person. But it's difficult when the spotlight is on you and the world news and social media and all of these things that you have to go through, and then you'll realize why it is or why you do what you do. And oftentimes we can move away from that. We get lost ourselves. So for as far as Greta's concerned, just watching from afar, and I certainly
Yeah.
don't know her. I admire her. She's young. And has she been taken advantage of to, send somebody else's message that she got caught up in that she wouldn't know? Very possibly.
Right.
But I
It,
think she's true to her message.
yeah. Which I do find admirable. So with you, I know you kind of hinted at it, and I know there's only one and only. Well, there's only one Erin Brockovich. There'll never be another, whatever. But does it get frustrating for you? Why there's not other people? Obviously, there's other paralegals and conservationists and people like to do what you do. That it's always, it seems like you get thrust out there. Like, would it be kind of cool if someone else stood next to you, or why aren't they on the list next to you? It's like I get frustrated for you when you told me about being on a watch list, all this stuff. Why? Because you care about humans and you care about the environment. It's like, well, hold on a second. Where's the other Aaron? Where's the Gary or the Suzanne or does it ever just piss you off to the point where you kind of like, what the hell's going on?
Oh yeah. I don't like to get into politics, but I'm at that point where now I'm looking right at it and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Oh my God, do I want to step into this? Maybe. But I can't do it, or none of us can do it till we get that real good sense of who we are. And I've learned a lot about myself through my environmental work and being around people. And it's hard and it's scary. And I don't know. It's just like sometimes you just got to do it.
Like who,
I
like who do you draw if, like, say you have like a question? I mean, obviously people like Ed in your life around, but if you have like a bad day, physically, mentally, spirit, whatever it is there someone you think about or can reach out to, kind of just talk through it to help maybe control your anger? Or
I call my therapist. I'm like, I fucking need to talk to you this week. He's like, okay, I'll fit you in tomorrow. I'm like, so, oh yeah, be my therapist. I've been with him 20 years. But it helps me, I love therapy because I'm blasting everything out loud. And then I can catch myself and I'm like, oh my God, did I just say that? Oh my God, do I really think that? I get compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
And so when I get there, that's when I'm calling him going, I need to see you this week. Where that's the reboot. That's breathe, get back to taking your 2-3 mile walks a day, get back to the gym, get back to, it's a retreat to myself. I need to sleep. I'm tired. I'm not going to do any good if I keep doing that. So I can recognize that moment. Now I have some pretty good stamina, so it can take me years to get there. As I've gotten a little older, I'm like, it's coming a little more often, but you have to recognize that moment, and you have to recognize we are so afraid to be imperfect. We are so afraid to be vulnerable. We are so afraid to fail that we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing for an image that at the end of the day, I don't think anyone gives a shit. And that's that moment where I'm just going to embrace it. I'm going to cry. I need to cry. I'm scared. I'm tired. I'm feeling vulnerable. And I have to take, that's kind of what happened to me in the beginning that we were talking about, even out of the train derailment. It is imperative that you recognize that. Otherwise you can push through and make that mistake, or you can push through and jeopardize your health, or you push through and you have that heart attack. And those are those moments that you really got to recognize. And so this is, again, back in the beginning, I was talking to you about instincts. Nobody knows you better than you. But if you've disconnected from you, you get to need to know that person again. And you need to know it's okay to say, okay, I'm exhausted. It's okay to cry. It's all of that. But see, these are all these things that we've been told: walk this way, talk this way, be this way, act this way. And I'll tell you, when you lose that sense of self, suddenly nothing starts to work. So I have a lot of those moments. And sorry. I did not know my phone rang on my computer.
It's all good.
I don't have my phone and I don't know how to shut it off on my watch. Oh my gosh.
Technology.
Dogs, phones. Wow.
What was the Wizard of Oz theory you were talking about?
Oh, so I've been obsessed with this for about 10 years. First of all, growing up in Kansas. I was born and raised in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a real Midwest girl. And of late, I'm being called back to my roots. So I kind of really go with these things. It's just a real thing. And we don't want to listen to it. We don't like to listen to ourselves. But I love the Wizard of Oz because I always thought I was Dorothy. And Dorothy was, the girl next door, and she's going to go out and live her dream. And I found it exciting. I hated the flying monkeys. They scared the hell out of me. But it wasn't until, I'm going to say 10, 12 years ago. This isn't about the film Erin Brockovich. I read the original Wizard of Oz book, written by L. Frank Baum. And there's an entire political allegory to his books that I was unaware of, that I started to study, which, by the way, has been studied by many a scholar. But L. Frank Baum wrote the book, The Wizard of Oz, at the pre-height of the Industrial Revolution as a way to teach his children the power of individualism, where we were going to be now living in a world that would increasingly begin to speak and think for you. So right there, I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. So in the political allegory, Dorothy is a representation of every girl in America, the girl next door. And as the story gets set up, and you see in the film, but in the book, each one of those characters has a meaning. So we all know Dorothy's running away. We know there's a twister. That twister is a representation of disruption in DC. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of interesting. And so the house, as we know, lands on the Munchkins. The Munchkins are a representation of the mass citizens who are frustrated. I'm like, oh, well, that sounds familiar. And they all tell her to follow the yellow brick road to the wizard who will fix everything for her. I'm like, oh God, this is getting really like I'm obsessed with this now. And so on her journey, she meets the Cowardly Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man. The Cowardly Lion is a representation of L. Frank Baum's best friend, Brian Williams Jennings, who was always running for populist president, known for his fiery rhetoric, but he had no courage. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Now that's hitting a little too close to home. Yeah, that might be some of our politicians for sure. And then the Scarecrow was a representation of the farmer. And everyone thought had no brain because the banks were buying up all the land. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at our farmers today.
Yeah.
All of that. And then the Tin Man was a representation of industry worker who would lose his heart. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what have happened to our workers? So now we have the cast of the American people, the girl next door, industry worker, our farmers, our politicians. So you know the story, they go look for the wizard, follow the yellow brick road. And so off they go on the yellow brick road, which was a representation of the gold standard.
Oh.
Follow the path of the money. So on their journey, as we know, the wicked witch who represents industry, and I don't want you looking over here, puts them to sleep in the poppy fields. The poppy fields. Look at some of the issue we have going on today. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the moment? Have we been to sleep? Did we get put to sleep? What the fuck? So I'm truly, and I will get on something and I will just never
awesome.
let it go.
Yeah.
I'll never let it go. But this is so highly studied and is in fact intentions of L. Frank Baum and his writings. So we know the story. They get to the wizard, they pull back the curtain, and what did they find? What did they find? What curtain are we pulling back today? Have we just put our belief not in ourselves, but in someone else that fucking has no idea what the hell they're doing in there either? But then thank God he taught them and gave them the greatest gift of all, which is what I think we've been missing. We have a brain. We have a heart. We have courage. Find it, use it, just like they were taught. And by God, they found their way home. And I am fascinated looking at this that
Yeah.
was written at the pre-height of the Industrial Revolution. And we are now post-Industrial Revolution. Wow, is this message coming around again?
Wild.
And I think it is. I think we're running a parallel. And I find it absolutely fascinating.
It's crazy when you look at the literature like that, like Animal Farm comes to Lord of the Flies, like all that stuff these people are writing about, and you look at like how it's happening in the world today, you're just kind of it's like obviously there's no time machine, but for them to have a pulse on what was happening, where the world could be handling, like these are the people we should be listening to. Those authors, the new authors that think this way, it's very fascinating.
I find it absolutely fascinating. I mean, we've learned history repeats itself, and
Right.
maybe he knew something. People are visionary, but for him, it was a way. How can I tell a story through a fairy tale?
Right.
And it was one of the greatest books and films ever that is part of like our culture, but there's a hidden message in there. And that was what's been so interesting. I mean, you can even Google this and look at the scholars and interpretations
Yeah.
and what was happening. But, history does repeat itself. But think about as we became that pre-height industrial revolution, what society and everything here in America was going through. And I think like everything that starts with good intentions over time gets corrupted.
Right.
It gets corroded. And then we forget the message. We forget why are we doing this anyway?
Right.
And I honestly believe the universe looked down on us and thought, you all are crazy. And so here comes COVID, and I'm just going to sit your ass down for a while.
Yeah.
Can you
Time out.
think about that? The world stopped. The world stopped. Oh my God. That shift, that transition, that Wizard of Oz, and kind of everything that we've been talking about. And it's so hard to just talk and like, it's here.
Yep.
And, I think music can tell us a lot of things, and movies. Yeah, I even think of when I just said it's here, Bill Paxton in the film Twister.
Oh yeah.
Because he was out there connected to that. And then the other character walked up to him and said, about the storm coming. And he said, it's already here. So I think this is a vital, critical moment for humanity that we get present. Stop worrying about woulda, coulda, shoulda, what we did in the past and what the hell tomorrow will be, because I don't know, but you got right fucking now.
Right.
And reconnect to this planet and to yourself. And I still think, and I believe, and I always will. We have that opportunity to take and find our way back.
Right. One of our huge supporters of the podcast, Lorianne, she's a paralegal actually herself in New Jersey, and she wanted to ask this question. I think it's a great question. With everything going on in the world, it seems like the Supreme Court has been very high profile the last couple of years for whatever reason, right? Is there a famous case or a court case or cases you always actively, which one do you find the most fascinating, or which case do you love the most? Or what's the case that just kind of like inspires you to keep doing what you do?
Every one of them, because they're all, destruction to the environment.
Yep.
Every one of them where the people learn, oh my gosh, to destroy the environment has destroyed us. I think the one that sticks out and bothers me the most, I'm a military mom of 2, is Camp Lejeune.
Oh yeah.
The fight that I saw Jerry Insminger go through for his daughter who died in his arms of cancer at 9, who learned on the news that the water at that camp was poisoned, and the DOD knew it and hid it and concealed it, is probably one of the most significant cases that situations for me has been gut-wrenching, yet a privilege to see the courage, the strength, the fortitude, and the worst of circumstances that the families have gone through, and yet still believed in the fight for their country. And what bothers me about it is they came home from war to be poisoned on their own soil. For me, I think that's the biggest black mark, the black eye that this country should feel. And I am so proud of everybody at Camp Lejeune. I'm so sorry what happened to them. We can never let that happen again. And they were poisoned by the water. What could we possibly be thinking? And so Camp Lejeune and Jerry Ensminger and Mike Partain and their fight 25 years politically, and watching Jon Stewart bust out on the PACT Act, and for the military that had been poisoned over there from the burn pits. And I, decades ago, had them contacting me about that. And then the fight to get Camp Lejeune, the Justice Act, part of the PACT Act, and to see a moment where the DOJ, where the DOD is going to take accountability. Believe me, they don't want this door open very long. They're going to want to shut it right back up and do what was right. Not only by the environment, but the men and the women and the children and the legacy of everything that they believe. And you ripped it away from it. They must restore it. We must never do it again. But Camp Lejeune will stand out for me as one of the most significant fights and egregious cover-up of these families and our servicemen and women I think I've ever seen.
Right. And it makes you wonder, has it happened since? If the DOD knew about then, would stop you. It's all about what we said before. It's like holding people accountable everywhere. And just be a human. And it's just like, it's just so sad.
It's happening everywhere, and on the military bases, especially with the forever chemical TCE. So again, when I make a comment, the $64,000 question, what do we do with all of our hazardous waste? Well, historically, it's been the solution to pollution is dilution or burn it. That's not going to work out. Now, in all of this greatness that we have, somebody should be able to figure out how we're going to do that. And I think we do have to look at legislation. I think, we do have to look at the EPA. And I'm staring in the face the comfortability. The EPA sleeps with industry. And again, where we think someone's got our back is completely absent. They fucked up the train derailment like I've never seen. But they know these things. They knew they had a warning from 3M and DuPont decades ago that this chemical, PFOS, perfluorooctanoic acid, was going to be a problem. But what action did they take? Okay, well, we'll set a guideline. Okay, don't anyone tell me to follow the science when you yourself as an agencies aren't. How'd you get a guideline? Based on what science?
Right.
So they set a guideline at 400 parts per trillion, and they let these chemicals into the stream of commerce first without knowing the outcome. We're the guinea pigs. And so they commissioned a study. These studies cost a ton of money. We have 88,000 chemicals hitting the marketplace. They can only study a few. They're underfunded, and they take forever. 5, 7, 10, 12, 15 years. So it wasn't until 2016 when Scott Pruitt got the studies, and he didn't want to share them. And I believe Congress made him. Houston, we have a problem. This chemical causes disease. Oh, wow. The 400 parts per trillion is way too high. We got to reduce it. Municipalities don't have a budget. They can't reduce it that low. What happens to me when news like that? My emails blow up. Twice my computer has crashed from emails from people going, oh my gosh, I just got a notice from the water company. What's this chemical? Is this why my child died of thyroid cancer? Is this why my son has testicular cancer? Is this why I lost my wife to kidney disease? It's a shit show. Something that all could have been avoidable. And this goes back to that principal moment, and I learned from my dad, do it right or don't do it at all.
Yeah.
So we've almost created this kind of circular motion, and we got to jump off the merry-go-round because it will not be sustainable moving forward. Just the idea, the mindsets, we're better than this.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to figure out some new ways. And I don't think a new way is I don't think we can go back to, it's either right or left, right or wrong, my way or the highway. Nothing will work out that way. We have to start looking and having conversations, not based on a party line, and I'm not going to toe a party line ever, but based on humanity, for God's sakes, and multi-pronged approaches. This door is open for so many avenues that will produce good economic bases, that will be better for us, that all of us can be involved in. And it's not just one approach. It will be a multi-pronged approach. And so I'm hoping that moment is here for us. I think it is. And I think that's where we're seeing tension. And that's where I think we're seeing this disruption, because that transition, we're in it.
Our kind of a transition here. Our mutual friend Mike, trader in California, awesome dude. It's kind of how I got in touch with you. It's like when he said that he trades with you and you do all the fitness stuff, I was like, it's one of those things where like you never assume. Like when I knew of Erin Brockovich, like, oh, obviously she has to stay in shape, definitely mentally and physically to put up with all the bullshit. But for someone like you has fitness always been something you've always been fascinated with? I mean, obviously it's vital to what you do, because a healthy mind, body, and soul is only going to prolong your spirit, correct?
Yeah. Yes, that is true. One thing we don't talk about is, we look at working out and training for our body, but you said a very key word there, our mind, mental health, and the importance of it. And so naturally for me, and part of my family, and I'm from a family of pro athletes, has always been, I don't always make the conscious connection, but unconsciously I know, running, moving, jumping, running track, competition, the mind game that comes with it. Even today at 63, I have to put on my mind game to go into that gym. I'm like, oh, because I'd really rather just stay home. I'm tired. I've been on the road. The mind. But, and the positivity that the mind needs to feed the body. But I always, after I train or do Pilates or go for a bicycle ride or go reconnect in nature or take that 5-mile hike, feels better. It just feels better. We need to move. We need to, all of that goes together, and it's such a lifelong journey. So part of my working out is innate. It's just in me. I think it's in all of us actually, but it's about activating it. And then you can really start to see through the performance. I mean, I'll dread going back to the gym if I've been out on the road, but then when I get back into my groove, and I'm like, and there'll be that moment where I'm like, yes, I can fit back into my jeans. But then there's that moment that is like, forget the jeans.
The clarity.
I feel good. I have energy. I'm taking breaths that I'm focused, and it's like game back on. So it's incredible. You don't even want to get me on. And my nutrition, my trainer, Mike, and I, who you know very well, we talk about this all the time. Sugar, the things that are bad for us. This is changing a diet or something that we bought way back in the way. Oh, look at the yummy sugar. All this is good for you. And how we've moved away from our health. So for me, being back at the gym, being back at Pilates, being back on the bike, that's that reconnection that we keep talking about. That's that self-renewal moment. And you'll find out, not only are we doing it because we want to be in shape or we want to get back into those jeans, it's that moment you're going to recognize, oh my gosh, I feel good. I'm breathing. I have clarity. I have energy. I'm sleeping better. I just think it's critical that, some activity for us is absolutely necessary for us to be our best human and to feel good.
I've always wanted to ask someone like you this question. So on late night television, sometimes they'll have like these ads where it's like, hey, are you suffering from blah, 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 blah. If you take this or whatever, you could be entitled to whatever. How successful are those ad campaigns? Is that like, because like I'm trying to figure out, like it always seems like it's medical related. If someone did an ad like that, like a law firm saying East Palestine, Ohio, whatever, hey, if you're suffering from this type of stuff, from this type of, it could be from this chemical, like is that a successful plan of attack for a law firm or people to get people involved in this litigation?
No, I mean, and they have to be very careful there, because even in East Palestine, if you don't want to find a chemical, you're not going to find a chemical. They don't even know what all the chemicals are out there yet. All these people do know is that they're having symptoms that we need to pay attention to. They're starting to have hand tremors. They're dizzy. Here's the thing, that whoever they are in a situation like this, whether it be Norfolk, who I don't trust at all, and I keep calling him Norfolk, which it's just a slip of the tongue. But when you're talking fast and you got your retainers in and you go to say Norfolk, and I'm like, oh my God, I was just on ABC News and I said Norfolk. I apologize. Freudian slip, right? We don't listen to the people. The very ones that experienced it, breathed it, live in it, and we discard that. And so these symptoms are telling you a story: the tremors, the nosebleed, the rashes, the hair loss, the fatigue. They can smell it. And if you gaslight them long enough and ignore it long enough, they eventually become sensitized to it, and they don't even know they're smelling it anymore. So East Palestine, they've been set up for worst case scenario. They're waiting for the day they get cancer. And so we don't know all the chemicals out there yet. And if they're not looking for them, guess what? You're not going to find them. And so in any one of these environmental issues, now in Hinkley was different. One chemical, and it was hexavalent chromium. But in a situation, Flint, Michigan, lead, switching river waters, you can't do, made the water caustic and corrosive, and all the lead in those pipes in the distribution system that nobody sees, that's unregulated, that nobody wants to talk about, deposited all that lead in there and delivered straight to the tap. But in a situation like Norfolk, there could be a plethora of chemicals we don't know about. They only want to stay focused on vinyl chlorides, or on VOCs, or they dissipate. They don't want to talk about heavy metals. I'm not sure that they're looking for heavy metals. There would be a plethora of chemicals in there. For God's sake. So, I mean, this is perplexing to me. So they had that train derailment. By the way, that was a rail line that's had years of problems, infrastructure issues. Here again, let's not fix that shit and just keep going till you have a train derailment. But for days, it was very quiet there because they were in there figuring out what to do. And what a lot of people don't know is they were digging a big hole and they bled all the chemicals out of the rail cars into that hole. Okay, well, right there, you set up a big aquifer contamination problem. But then somebody had this bright fucking idea, let's light it on fire. Well, I guess they didn't take chemistry 101, because boom! Now, these chemicals rained out in a 20-mile radius. We may never know what they all are. But instead of evacuating them, which they did, you brought them back way too soon. You didn't have the answers yet. You didn't have the answers yet. And you can't take that risk with rail cars, unidentified chemicals, blowing them up. And then you have chemicals created with other chemicals that you create other chemicals with. Is a true shit show. I think that the best scenario possibly, which is ultimately what happened in Hinkley, is they're going to have to buy up the whole town.
Yeah.
And get them all out.
Ugh.
But we again, something we won't do on the upfront.
Correct.
And we just bring them back in and set them up for we're creating our own public health crisis over and over again.
Right.
And that's the thing that gets me. I've watched for 30 years over and over and over again, starting from Hinkley all the way ending here with PFAS, Camp Lejeune, the rail site, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. I think we've definitely hit the definition of insanity or stupidity.
Right.
I don't know which one it is, but we have got to break that cycle.
Before I let you go, I know obviously your books, I was able to find your books on Amazon and stuff like that, but if people want to stay in tune where you're going to be talking at, if you have a new project coming out or something like that, is there a website or certain area you can direct people to go check out your stuff?
Well, yes and no. Usually what happens, I have a website, but I'm not updating it all the time. I'm not on social media a whole lot. You'll see me out on Twitter. That's where I might go send out a message about something that's happening. I'm never good at any kind of self-promotion. It's really weird. Generally it'll be on the news and then people email me.
Or some corporation will be like, God damn it, she's out here. We fucked up. Yeah.
And I it's so hard for me to talk sometimes because I have to be there.
Yeah.
If you talk to people that I work with, I scare them. We worked on a big chemical situation in the plantation fields in Hawaii, and nobody could find the original well where they dumped the chemicals. And I'm out in a 9,000. This is that Bill Paxton Twister moment. If you can be still and you can be silent, and I was out there barefoot, you can connect to the environment. It's talking to you. You can hear it. But I could feel the movement. And I'm like, that well is over there. And by God, it was.
Wow.
And I'll go into a room, a huge warehouse. And again, Jim Drury, a very dear friend of mine who's passed away. I'm not going in there with her, and she scares me because she'll know where it is. I'm telling you. If you'll get present, we are energy. Connect.
Yeah.
Every time I find the box, I'm like, no, it's not there. It's over here. And just to prove my point that I had to prove to myself, because I hear it too much, oh, she's like Shirley MacLaine, she's a medium, oh, she's crazy, don't go around her. I'm like, that's good, don't come around me. Yeah. You're messing up my energy, so go away. Was when here in California, we had the hurricane coming, and then we had earthquake, and so they call it the hurricane now or something.
Yeah. So
every time it rains, I like to run outside barefoot. It's electric. The energy's changing. And so I happen to be outside barefoot in the rain, and all of a sudden my thighs got real heavy. And I'm like, okay, that's a very strange sensation. And I was like, God, I'm having a stroke. And then I felt my feet, and I'm like, I can't move. I'm like, oh my God, it's a stroke. And I looked over, and the water was sloshing out of the pool. And I'm like, oh my God, it's an earthquake. So as it moved through and I'm standing at that energy, that heaviness in my legs. So I'm like, oh my God, that was so cool. So I ran to the computer and I started like Googling all this stuff. But our body is built like, and it can be a shock absorber. So it's not a fluke. It's kind of a phenomenon. As that energy and that motion comes through, your body can act like a shock absorber. So you know how you're going over a bump and you get kind of stiff to absorb the shock? That's kind of what happens to us. And I actually felt it and had that experience. So for me, I know it is what it is. And once I've had that and felt it, experienced it, I own it. And I'll never back away from it. And that's what happens to me in those communities. It's real. We think it's not, it's real. And I just so want us to embrace how amazing it is to be human.
Yeah.
And the experiences, the spirituality, the thoughts, the feeling, the heart. I mean, own it, be in it. And that's where I encourage people, if you're ever lost, go to the ocean, go to the water, stand in the sand barefoot and be that energy.
Yeah. Just awesome. Just awesome. Well, this has been awesome, Erin. Thank you for the time. I know you're very busy. But
well, I know I'm all over the place too. I mean, my gosh, it's that, thank you for asking good questions. And
yeah, you are very, I've never had interest in, the only time I watch court cases and stuff, it's either a TV show or a movie. But seeing someone like you with doing the paralegal stuff and the work I know the work that goes into it, your passion, it's very inspiring. And I'm in a security world, but I can look at your work ethic and drive and be like, well, I just gotta take care of myself, do as much as I can, but always look out for myself, but exude that positive human interaction and experience to other people. And I think it's very inspiring.
Well, it's a real phenomenon. And, again, it's been of late, I'll attach things to a film or a song, but it just came to my mind. I am you, you are me, we are all together.
Yeah.
And how we can find that united front. And I don't think we will till we find ourselves in that connection to this great, think about it, planet. Think about the water. Think about, for me, water, one river, one creek, one tributary, all merging together, the force, the strength that creates the Niagara Falls. See, that is us too.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, I'll kind of end with this, there's a couple of things that come to my mind. Look, you asked me how I find my way. Sometimes it's hard. And 10 years ago, I was really like, fuck this. Am I allowed to cuss on this? It was too late.
For sure. Yeah.
I've dropped a lot of F-bombs. There's a new study though that, people that cuss a lot
Yes.
have good intelligence. I'm like, okay, I'll take that. I'll accept that one. But I was done. I was just done. You get worn down.
Yeah.
And until I got to catch my first granddaughter being born. And I'm telling you, it was kumbaya. I became Lion King, and I'm like, yes, this is it. This is why I'm in this fight for her. That legacy. I'm like, oh, so it just brought new life into me. And I am in a legacy phase. And I always wonder, the lawsuits can't be a part of the solution. I understand they're there and people deserve their justice. And I believe in justice. I believe in all of that. But it can't be the answer. The answer is this should have never happened in the first place.
Correct.
And sometimes I don't know what to do. So I want to share with you, I got to pass the Olympic torch. After the film came out and they ran the race through LA, I have the torch out on my wall and I did not want to do it. And I'm a runner, but I was scared. I'm like, oh no, this is the Olympics. Yeah. I mean, how exciting. And everyone said, you have to do it. You have to do it. So I agreed to do it. So I started getting excited when I got the tracksuit. I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. Now, as the day approaches, I'm like, okay, so now I'm thinking, well, I want to look good. So I did my hair and makeup. And it wasn't until later I look back on that and I'm like, who does their hair and makeup before they go run a race, you know? But when I got there, it started to rain. And I'm like, no, oh my God, now there comes negative Nancy that lives in my head. That little voice that can get in your head. Oh no, your mascara is going to run. I'm like, oh my God. Well, now what if I can't see? What if I drop it? What if I trip? What if I fall? Oh my gosh, this is going to be embarrassing. Yeah. And then this whole thing came. Wait a minute. There's a huge crowd here and I'm feeling the energy of the crowd. And I'm like, this is exciting. I'm like, but where am I supposed to go? There wasn't anybody like, do I stand here in my box? When do I start? Is anyone going to tell me? Where am I supposed to go? Who's my leader? And my mind is just going crazy. And somebody comes up and says, okay, Erin, the race is coming and they're going to start coming around the bend. You'll probably see the torch. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And he goes, let's just start a run. He's like, it's all going to be good. So as I start running and I'm feeling the energy of this crowd, I'm like, this is really exciting. He said, you can pick up your pace a little. He's kind of going next to me. I'm thinking, okay, what do I do next? I'm so scared. And so he said, okay, so Erin, start looking around. And I start looking around. He goes, the torch is coming right behind you. And I can see it. And I'm like, oh shit. I go, what am I supposed to do? He goes, just pace yourself out because they're coming. And he's getting closer. He's closer. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? He goes, grab it. And I'm like, I turned around and I grabbed it. The minute I made that choice to grab it, to own it, to be involved, I swung that thing so far out ahead of me and I went, yes, I know where I'm going. If there would be anything that I look at my legacy that I could leave people, and it wouldn't necessarily be about just environment or just lawsuits, it would be about when you are uncertain, seize the moment, grab it, believe in you, you've got this, and just go for it. And step out of that moment of fear. Step out of that moment where you're like, why me? And just take on, why not me? And you don't have to be any one certain thing or fit this idea of what you're supposed to be, other than be you and believe and get involved and fight for yourself, fight for your rights, fight for your country, fight for this planet, and fight for the future of those that we leave behind when we move on. And I just hope that is the greatest message I could send to anybody. Nothing changes till you do. Find that person.
Yeah. Awesome. This has been awesome, Erin. I can't thank you enough.
I enjoyed it. I thought that would be something to leave with you because I'm like,
Yeah, no, it's the message I think we should all strive for.
Yeah, I agree. And I think through my journey and through my career, and even Steven Soderbergh, the film Erin Brockovich wasn't just about the environment. There was a lot of subtext in there about who we are or who you might be. And I often wonder why it resonated. And I think for a whole host of reasons. And that would be it. And the environment is a part of it, but learning that the environment is us and who are you. And I was that young woman. Nobody thought I should be out there doing anything. And I think those are some of the greatest lessons I've learned about myself that I feel I would like to impart to others. especially the next generations coming up. And, in social media, always striving to look like or be somebody else that we see on social media. Be the best you, man. That's the best gift, and everything we've talked about is a part of it. Take care of your mental health, go to the gym, go for a bicycle ride, reconnect to this planet, find out who you are, be comfortable with who you are. And you don't have to fit an idea of what somebody else thinks you should be. Fit the idea of who you are and what you can be.
So it's awesome. Thank you so much, Erin.
You're welcome.
Oh, hello. I'm just enjoying this nice fucking candle. Anyways, I'm John, the host of Spirit Talk, and I want to talk to you about nice fucking candles. We are lucky to have nice fucking candles as a sponsor of the podcast, and if you use code SPIRITTALK15, you get 15% off your first order, or use the affiliate link below to always get your candle needs through nice fucking candles. Nice fucking candles are 100% soy wax. They have a 65-hour burn time, maybe more if you nurse the flame a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not an expert on flames or candles, but I will say these things burn a long fucking time. You ask me about the wick. It's a double wick for even burning, which is amazing. And they come with 3 incredible flavors. I'm not sure if you're going to be eating these candles, but if you do like them, the scents are eucalyptus and ginseng, tobacco and fireside, and seaside and driftwood. Once again, nice fucking candles. They are the candle company for Spirit Talk. And if you love candles and need a good scent to clear out your office, your room, your podcast room, your weight room, your whatever you're doing in a room that smells like crap, use this candle. It's amazing. Thank you. Check them out. Love nice fucking candles.